Okay, welcome to this week's episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dai-Shihan Jeffrey here from Warrior Concepts. A little bit of a sound differential going on right here. We're in the new location. This isn't going to be the regular backdrop. I'm kind of in an area that we have set off at the moment where we're not doing any work to get us back in. For those of you who missed it, June 2nd, 2025, there was a fire in the plaza where our martial arts school was located, and kind of displaced us. So here we are beginning I guess we're in the middle of week 5 post fire. We're in a new location, just trying to get it set up for classes and whatnot. But we held off Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday and everything but Kuden, our weekly Kuden for the previous 4 weeks. And so we're just chomping at the bit to get back. We've got online students and local students just ready to get back to class. Just got to get a bunch some other stuff done. Make sure the local powers that be have come in and inspect and see what they need to see, and then we'll be off to the races. But I got tired of not doing these things. So again, temporary location. So I apologize if it seems like there's a little sound thing. I'm in a small space right here, and to my ears, it sounds like there's a little bit of an echo or whatever, but we have what we have. I hope it's being filtered a little bit by my camera and my technology, but we'll see. Anyway, so we're back on track. And so with this week, what I want to do is I want to take a look at the same theme that I kicked off 2 days ago, Monday evening or during our podcast, taking a look at fighting through injury, right? But what we're going to do with this one is take a look at 4 overlooked moments that were likely to be injured or wounded or whatever, right? In a self-defense situation, right? Take a look at those, but a little bit different here. And I know these guys like to argue a lot, right? The sport competitive guys, maybe it's just in their nature because they like competition. But this is another one of those areas where there's a difference, right? And it's not that these guys don't get injured during sport fights and things like that, but not talking about the same thing. As a matter of fact, here in a minute, I'll set things up where we'll get a better or more clear picture. So if you missed Kuden, no big deal. You can go over to the YouTube channel and click on the live tab, and it'll be the most recent one, unless you go later after this one, in which case you'll have to skip over. But what you'll see is all the lives are either Whiteboard Wednesdays or Kuden. So they literally alternate, and you can't confuse them because the Kuden has a kind of a traditional parchment type background, and these have, well, there's a whiteboard and me I think I'm in a blue t-shirt and my gi pants. I'm not even wearing gi stuff today because as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to go right back to working on getting the dojo set up so that students can get back to class. Right. Anyway, so again, 4 overlooked moments to prepare for. But before we do that, let's take a look at a problem and, well, my initial premise for this training, right? And the core premise is that most martial artists and self-defense practitioners, instructors, whatever, right, train as if they'll always be 100%, 100% healthy, strong, aware, all that kind of stuff when danger hits. And actually, truth be told, most of the survivalists and bushcraft people and whatnot that I've come up against or seen their things and whatnot, that's the premise, okay? But speaking as someone who, one, grew up in a very violent environment, both inside my home and outside my home. I'll just fix my technology here just a little bit. That tells you that we're live, unless you're watching recording later. Either way, I'm live as I'm doing this. Anyway, both in my home and outside in the neighborhood environment and whatnot, just where I grew up. And then also into my law enforcement years, military and that kind of thing. And that is that real violence doesn't care. Doesn't care if you're sick. It doesn't care if you're injured. Doesn't care if you've been blindsided first or the opponent cheated or whatever. That's the nature of things. When we talk about nature, that's natural, right? Okay. So anybody that's looking for a fair fight in an actual true self-defense situation, not two jackwagons like who are not, duking it out because they bump shoulders or they're fighting for the girl on Saturday night at the bar. Okay. Not that. All I'm talking about is like, you didn't volunteer to be there. Suddenly, either somebody's in your house or you're being mugged on the street or whatever. Not the same. Okay. As a matter of fact, they look for those things. Okay. So what we really come up with as a priority or as a central problem as we're going to approach it during this session, right? The problem is avoidance. The problem isn't that these things exist or they don't exist, that people cheat or they don't cheat, that you'll be injured or you won't be injured or whatever. The problem within the martial arts and self-defense world is avoidance, okay? Either out of ignorance, people don't know any better, or they've never thought of it, right? And that's what I'm here to fix. Or it's these jackwagons online that laugh that kind of stuff off because from an egocentric perspective, they need to feel like they're the guy or they're the girl, right? And since they've won all these other fights, then, put some gloves on, get in the ring, man, learn how to fight like everybody else. Screw that, right? If I fight like everybody else, then like he knows what I'm going to do and he knows how to beat that. This is not a contest. This is so I can go home, tuck my grandson into bed, right? Kiss my wife goodnight, that kind of stuff. No trophies, no whatever, okay? So the problem here is avoidance, right? Again, either ignorance or people laughing it off, or it's just scary as hell, right? Where they don't have to think about it. It's kind of like death, right? I don't want to have to think about it. Okay? If I don't think about it, then maybe it'll go away. It'll be okay. Good luck, right? So when we're looking at this from an avoidance problem, right? Let's take a look at 3 realities, okay? And again, this is one of those things that's like gravity, okay? You don't have to believe in gravity for it to work. You don't have to believe in gravity for it to be true, okay? We do this all the time in training. You don't have to believe in gravity, but if I sweep your legs out from under you, gravity becomes my ally and yanks your nary ass to the floor, okay? The floor becomes my ally, okay? So let's take a look at this problem from 3 perspectives. The first one is that martial arts, whether it's sport, competitive, MMA, pick a brand name, doesn't really matter, right? They often stop the training, the fight, the drill, whatever, or the match, right? Stops once a clean hit lands. I'm just going to put stops at point, but this is not about point karate, right? There are those things, but there's some indicator. Person goes down, whatever, the ref gets in between that person and the other person to make sure they don't come in and take advantage of that. I know shit like that, happens in MMA, but there's a certain point where the ref comes in and, right, could be knockout, whatever, okay? Injury, flat out injury, is a reason to stop. Somebody becomes injured or the knockout happens or whatever. Okay. The reality in a real self-defense situation is if you get knocked out, you can't stop that person from doing whatever the hell they want from that point on. To you, to the person you were protecting, nothing. Okay. Again, the problem with the avoidance problem is that in the real world, the attacks don't end just because you're hurt. Okay. So I guess my markers are still recovering from the problem as well. Let's use this. Do this in red because it's that important. Nothing stops due to injury. Okay. You may hear some noise in the background. I got people working in the dojo and stuff. So anyway, So nothing stops because of injury, right? So we can avoid this all we want. But if we don't recognize these things, they can creep into our training, okay? Somebody stumbles, right? Goes to the ground. Are you okay? Right? Shit, people do that after a throw or a takedown or a lock. Partner's on the floor, whatnot, and the training partner reaches out to offer a hand to help them up. That's not realistic training. I know it's being nice, but it's not realistic training. Right? So for my intermediate and advanced students, they need to roll to get the hell up off the floor. If for no other reason than to get out of that spot and to get it back on their feet. But if you let somebody help you, then they can jack you on the way. Yeah, but my partner wouldn't do that. In a real fight, I would. No. You will do as you train. Okay. So I've watched, I had a partner one time in my military police days. Let's change color here. In my military police days, where he and I were the only two serious martial artist self-defense people in the unit. Okay. Now, he did sports stuff. I did this. And one time we were actually out and assigned to German National Police, Polizei. Okay. Bad mother. And we all responded to a club where Germans and service members, foreigners, whatever, went and whatnot. And that was just this big freaking free-for-all, right? And for instance, in jiu-jitsu and in judo, my days training in those things, and in some other arts that kind of borrow these, there is a break fall where when you're thrown or taken to the ground or whatever, right, you slap, right? It's about dissipating the power and the energy and whatnot, okay? In ninjutsu, that's a what if in worst case scenarios where you're going to hit hard and you need to do something to dissipate things, right? Otherwise, we're doing break falls, we're doing rolls, we're doing things to redirect energy and power and those kind of things, okay? So anyway, we're in this situation, and this guy, my partner is trying to apprehend this guy, and he whips him into the ground, and my partner does this slapping break fall, and his arm makes contact with the curb. You know, the curb is right at the edge of the road, those little rods, right? Arm hit long before his hand did, okay? And he broke his arm in two places because of that break fall, right? So could it have been avoided? But that was instinctive for him because that's the way you did it, right? So again, we got to be careful with these kind of things, right? So anyway, kind of a little quote from one of my teachers coming up through the ranks, Shoshi Malmstrom, former Marine, police officer, that kind of thing, right? These are just one of those things we heard on a regular basis. In a real fight, the question isn't if you'll be hurt, it's whether you can still operate when you are. Okay, so this is not an if situation, this is a when. Okay, so to avoid it is more than just problematic. Okay, in the military, we used to say if you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. So this isn't about winning or losing as much as it sounds like it is. It's about preparation. Okay, because we can prepare all we want and still end up losing just because shit happens. But to not prepare and not have the options that we need, or not being able to have the right mindset, or the right be able to pull the right skills, or to adapt in the right way, because we didn't put that in our toolbox, that's on us. Okay, that's on us. We used to call that being an accomplice to our own ass kicking. Okay, so anyway, let's do this. Let's take a look at four critical moments. They're kind of timing, the points in time, right? Where these things are critical because injury could take place, right? And we're going to have to adapt to the injury to deal with him, not just to him. Okay, people, and I know early on in my training as well, right? The focus was always on Henka right? Making variations of the technique. But I lucked out. I had teachers that at a certain point in training, the emphasis went from technique, because we revisited the same techniques over and over again. But what changed was the scenario. Something about the scenario changed. We would change the environment, parking lot, between two parked cars, in a hallway, those kind of things, multiple attackers, weapon, no weapon, different weapons, all kinds of things, right? Injuries is a big thing that we worked with quite a bit, right? So henka there's another category for how you go about making henka, right? So take a look at 4 of these things, right? And we'll pass through these a couple of times, and then what I want to do is provide some training suggestions for each of these, right? Again, you see it's outlined. I'll give you 3, something to get started, and then I got a little bonus for you at the end, right? And if you're interested in taking this farther, right, afterwards, you can always go over to onlineninjaacademy.com. If you just go to onlineninjaacademy.com, you'll see the higher end programs that we have that help students get more of this, right? But as a first stage, I made this worksheet for students to help them take the Ninja no Hachimon, these 8 study areas that were developed in ancient Japan. They were kind of the litmus test to determine whether or not somebody or a school was teaching authentic Ninjutsu or they were teaching something else, right? And so people often know these, right? You can do a Google search. There they are, right? But what would they look like in today's world? Because we have to remember that the ninja have always used the technology, the best technology of the day, right? Whether it's mental, strategic, physical, tools, whatever, right? Not a whole lot of ancestor worship. So if they were putting this thing together today, what would it look like without changing the principles and concepts that the originals are based on? Okay, so if you're interested, you can hop over there later and grab that. Anyway, so let's take a look at these 4 critical injury timing category kind of things, right? So first one is you're injured before the attack ever happens. You're injured before the attack ever happens. What is that? Okay. Well, if you were on for Kuden this week, then you kind of have a heads up. But this could be pre-existing conditions. Okay, bad knees, like arthritis, those kind of things, or just a pre-existing injury, right? Old football injury, whatever, right? Could be bad knees, bad back. Could be chronic pain. Could be hypoglycemia, right? Low blood sugar. One of my guys is just been fighting with a blood sugar issue for a long time. He's had a kidney transplant, all that kind of stuff. And so his sugar can spike to the highest highs and crash low with just a little bit of effort, right? So what if, right? So it's not about what's happening during the attack. He's bringing this with him, right? I'm bringing arthritis at this stage of my life. I'm 62 and a half years old. I'm bringing arthritis already. Doesn't relieve me of my responsibility to protect myself and my loved ones or whoever I'm trying to protect, right? Things change with age. Hatsumi Sensei's talked about this, right? What else could fall under this? Well, fatigue, right? We could be exhausted. You just pulled a double shift. You could have been up all night long with a sick kid, whatever, right? Illness, right? Or we're back to the 62 and a half thing, right? Could be age. Okay. And a third one could be we're caught off guard, mentally distracted, that kind of thing, where, hopefully it's not you, right? But way too many friggin' people. Out in public, tons of people walking around them. Or how about the big thing that's really common in the cities? People are walking around with headphones in, looking down, not making eye contact, because, too many people to connect with, right? And so just not aware, not even a little bit, right? Of course we're aware. I'm listening to my music, got my jams. Great, okay? Hopefully you don't get jammed, right, while you're listening to your jams, right? So we'll come back to the training things and whatnot, right? But again, key insight that I want you to have at this stage here is that injury isn't always physical, right? Mental fog, emotional overwhelm, all kinds of things, right, can cripple your defense before the game even starts, right? Before the attack even starts. Okay. So again, we'll come back to training suggestions, but next one, right, is the injury occurs at first contact. Probably should have saved some space and just wrote first contact. Okay. I'm using a stand-in easel here because the one I normally use is either in temporary storage or we lost it during the fire. So anyway, so first contact, what does that mean? Well, let me give you a little story here. I shared this during Kudet as well, so I apologize if you caught that. Just give me a minute so I can get everybody else caught up. When we used to do demonstrations at local fairs and things like that, one of the skits that we did on a regular basis was designed around countering the one of the typical female responses to the question, have you ever thought about taking self-defense classes? And their response is, why should I? That's my husband, that's my boyfriend's, that's my partner's job, whatever, right? What's really ironic is that I would say, oh, so they can protect themselves? And like 99.9% of the time, a woman would either roll her eyes, laugh, or go, wait a minute, did you just tell me that it's their job to keep you safe, but they couldn't fight their way out of a wet paper bag? Interesting. Okay. That's cognitive dissonance. But anyway, so the way we set up the skit was have a guy and a girl walking kind of arm in arm, right? Like they're walking through the park or walking down the street or whatever, right? And bad guy or bad guys, because sometimes we make it a 2-on-1 kind of thing. One would come up with a club, whack the guy over the head and lay him out cold. And then that left her 2-on-1 against attackers that, she doesn't have him. So, of course, our girl would show how to handle this shit in short order and everything would be good. Then she'd wake him up and, let's go, man. I'm hungry. I want to eat, whatever. But what if, right? What if we didn't see the fight starting? Okay. Again, usually when people are training about our partner, we get set or in a sport fight, whatever. Nobody comes up and punches you in the back of the head or buckles a knee or whatever before, right? And then your brain has to race to figure out not only what the hell is happening, but realize that you're being attacked and make sense out of the chaos to move forward. But that is what it is, right? So maybe you're 100%, right? You don't have all these things that we talked about here. You are fresh. You're 100%, man. You're like all that. And next thing you know, there's 3 of everything or 2 of everything, and right, or you've got this pain in your side because somebody stuck something in through the ribs, to an organ or whatever, right? Okay, so what do we have, right? So this could be, again, blindsided punch, could be where the first blow lands before you even recognize that there's an attack. Okay, so blindsided means that he's outside of your peripheral vision or outside of your awareness, and boom, you get hit. 1, 2. The way we used to train, you could be hit multiple times before you even realize you're in a fight. You could have been gone over. Shoshi Malmstrom used to talk about going through the honey list, right? Am I supposed to bring home after work milk and bread? And next thing you know, you've been hit once, 3 times, whatever. You're still up, or maybe you're down and they're like dog piling on or whatever, but your brain is racing to make sense out of the chaos. Okay. Or you could be in a crowd or environmental injury. Right. What I mean by that is you could be in, around, and already kind of being used, right? You're at a fair, you're walking the streets in Canal Street during busy time and just bustle of people, right? And other people are reaching out, trying to sell you, knockoff handbags or whatever, right? And so you're being overwhelmed by all these bumps and whatnot. And next thing you know, one of them isn't, right? Or you step on something, or the attack comes in, right? And you step back because you're cool, man. You step back into your ichimonji and the ground's not level, or there's something there, and your foot slides quickly, and next thing you know, your hip flexor tendon is now pulled, or your ankle rolls, right? And it buckles. Nobody's stepping in to stop anything. Okay, now what? Okay, so I could step on an object, right? Step on a nail, right? Broken piece of glass, whatever. Okay, so again, could happen. We're bringing handicap to the attack. Might even be the reason that he chooses us and cuts us from the herd. 2, happens first contact, right? We weren't fast enough, or we underestimated this guy because, we've got, whatever level black belt, and I already assume advantage, right? Even though ninja assume disadvantage. And I take that first shot. Oh, shit, right? And now, right, eyes partially closed, or there's sweat or blood or something rolling into my eyeball, and things are they're shutting down quickly. Okay. Let's see. Number 3 is actually during the defense. Okay. So during the engagement, okay? Somewhere in there, during the defense itself. Okay. Think about how many things could go wrong. Nobody thinks about how many things could go wrong. I know my shit, man. I got the advantage because, I learned ninjutsu. I learned tic-tac-toe. I learned, right? And of course, whatever I'm doing is best. So, right. Anyway, right. So it could happen during engagement. Okay. And so, again, this is just damage sustained as the fight continues. Okay. Knife slashes, broken fingers, headbutts, blunt force trauma. He could hit you. He could do something. You could get injured, right? Shit happens in training all the time. I remember one time I was working this throw counter from the Gyokoryu, where a person steps in to do a seonage, right? The shoulder, over the shoulder kind of throw. And there's this defense where you shift and put your hand down at their hip assembly to jam everything up, and then you can take them down. And my partner that time around was a little taller. And so when I did this, I actually caught here more than flat on here where I'm supposed to catch. And not only did my fingers flex, but my hand flexed in the middle of my hand, and I could feel the metatarsals strain. Not easy to make a fist after that. Not easy to grab things. Okay, so now I've got this injury. I've got one less limb, one less weapon that I can use. Right. So again, all kinds of things can happen. Okay. I remember back in the day when we would do things like this, and something would hit. It could get hit in a way or on a point, like bicep muscle, or bone could get smashed or whatever. Or we could be doing knife defense kind of things, and something could get cut. So just a limb, right? We'll just talk about a limb for the moment. Gets cut in a way that physiologically, right? Because we studied Grey's Anatomy, physiologically, we know that from that point down, and sometimes even above that, right, things aren't going to work. So we were forced to, right? We do little sparring things, or we would do this little thing. And from that point on, from the time he got hit, we'd have to drop it and not use it because it wouldn't be usable in a real fight, right? Nothing makes me laugh more than in movies where somebody gets damaged or injured and they drop it because they can't use it. And then the next scene, they're using it like there's no problem. It doesn't work that way, okay? And for people that could not leave their arm immobile and not use it, then that person was told when that thing got damaged, they were to put it behind them and shove it in their belt so that it was tied down. Okay, literally eliminated from the fight. Okay, so interesting stuff. Okay, so how do you play with this? Okay, there's ways to train where you simulate like either being exhausted or you've taken a shot or 3 without getting hit, without getting punched all over the place, right? How do you get the adrenals up? How do you get the blood pumping, the heart's racing, the skin's got that tingling kind of feeling, breathing, is short and rapid and those kind of things. And you've got this cloudy kind of thing going on, right? There's little things that we can do to simulate it without actually, being damaged. Okay. So anyway, damage during the encounter. And then here's one that's even for people that do these. This last one is it's for all intents and purposes, it's never done. Okay. And this is damaged after, right, the initial attack ends. Okay. So you could have put the person on the ground, you could have knocked him away from you, whatever. Okay. So what could this look like? Well, the attacker's last ditch strike, right? There's lineages out there like the Musashi Ryu, right? You're throwing somebody to the ground, he's going to get knocked out on the way, and he'll pop your eardrums on the way over, or he'll attack on the way through. We have things from the Koto Ryu and some of our other lineages that do the same things, right? That attack during, right? They've successfully brought you over, but you're attacking in the process. So you could win because you slammed him down, he's unconscious or he can't move or whatever. But now, right, you've got this problem going on. Okay. So again, could be a last ditch strike. That last ditch strike could have been, right, you throw him to the ground. Next thing you know, he draws a weapon. Okay. Bang, or a knife comes out, or grabs a freaking pipe that's on the ground and cracks you across the knee. That kind of thing, right? You could end up having to deal with a second assailant. A lot of people struggle through and fight as hard as they can do because they're dealing with this guy right here, and that thing is over. And next thing you know, his friend or two friends or whatever come in. They're fresh. We're not. Right? Energy's depleted, that kind of thing, right? Or we could realize that during this one, okay, or we could know that during this one, okay, there's this realization of that injury, okay, or of that moment, okay. This could be anything from, we know we took a cut or a stab or whatever, and we're bleeding out, and we need to immediately do something to stay alert, to stay conscious, right? We could recognize that shock is setting in, or the adrenaline and whatnot is fading, and we're starting to have that letdown kind of thing, and you can't just power back up again because the system it needs a reset, right? And again, just there's more that we could play with, but I think this is enough to get everybody started. Okay, so these 4 points, right? So let me just go back because I think I missed things along the way. So the key insight on number 1 with the before is injury isn't always physical. We talked about that. Mental fog, emotional overwhelm. Where's my number 2? Key insight on the blindsided punch and all that kind of stuff, right? On first contact. What you do in the next 2 seconds determines whether you're a victim or a victor. Okay. Key insight on number 3, during, is adaptation wins when strength fades. And number 4, this thing in the after, okay? Danger's not over when you think it is. It ends when you can safely walk away. All right? So we've done training in the past on Zanshin, that awareness, and those kind of things. This is actually a type of Zanshin, right? Being aware of things you should be aware of, and making sure that you're mindful about integrating them into your training. Okay. All right. Let's go back through one more time to kind of round this out, give you some training suggestions for each of these phases. And again, I'm only going to give you 3. You be creative and work this out for yourself, because it's kind of our job. Okay. Teacher gets you started. I was told a long time ago that you'll only ever in this art, you will only ever get 10% of the art in the dojo. So for everybody that wants to be spoon-fed or wants to know if they should even bother learning or practicing something, like, is it on the test? I don't give a shit what belt you're going for. The only test that matters is the one where the bad guy shows up. Okay. So you're only going to learn 10%, which means that you need to steal the rest, or you need to be paying attention to what goes on in the world and bring that on board You need to be using your conceptualization faculties, right? Your creative faculties to learn from news stories about assaults, watching other fights and how other fighters do things, or watching somebody be injured, right? Oh man, so if he would have been injured, he wouldn't have lost that fight. Okay, let's change that question. What would happen if you were injured like that, and if you lost that fight, it meant ICU, right? Intensive care unit, right? It meant jail, or it meant morgue. Okay. See, sport fights aren't like that, right? Is there a possibility? Yeah, of course. Okay. But there's all kinds of safety mechanisms put in so that, again, they can stop things at a certain point, right? Injury is always a reason to stop things, right? Okay. Same thing with these things here, right? With this before, these guys, right? If it's sport fighting, what do they know? They know when the fight's going to be. They know who it's going to be against. They can prepare. They can train, all that kind of stuff, right? What happens if they get ill or injured before fight night? Fight gets postponed. You can't have the guy like being, at a disadvantage. It's got to be a fair fight. Yeah, okay. I'm pretty sure that most muggers would be happier than shit to jump you on your way to the pharmacy to pick up your meds when you have the flu or something where you just feel like shit. You barely were able to climb out of bed and get into your clothes without falling down. And okay, so let's one, don't argue with those folks, okay? Because they're going to believe what they're going to believe. Okay, it's kind of like having an argument with a pigeon or playing a board game with a pigeon. Okay, he's going to knock shit off the board. He's going to strut around and shit on the game board and act like he won anyway. So don't have arguments with people like that. Okay. 2, stay clear about what the problem is. Not just this problem, the problem of surviving against somebody who doesn't give a rat's ass about you, and it's not a fair fight. Okay. And even in fair fights, okay, yeah, you could win that trophy, you could not win that trophy or that check or whatever, but the winners in all of those fights are the ones who paid good money for tickets to have their bloodlust fulfilled so they could watch 2 meatheads beat the shit out of each other. Okay. Real warfare, real messy. All right, so let's go back through these. So the before stage, okay, training suggestions, right? So we can create reduced capacity training sessions, okay? What I mean by that is one hand or one leg is already offline, like you've got an injury, okay? Slower reaction time, okay? One of the things I learned from Hatsumi Sensei way early in my training, I think I was still a white belt, when he talked about if you've really mastered this stuff, you should be able to go half of your attacker's speed and still beat him with the timing game, okay? Because timing is about movement and positioning and timing of the parts moving, not how fast you can contract muscles, okay? But people that need this, they're going to argue for that until they get too old and nature takes its course. But this, if you're training correctly in this art, you should get better with age. Okay? When you're naturally going to get slower and weaker because of muscle atrophy and those kind of things, but you should still get better because timing, distancing, angling, flow, those kind of things, they get better with age. Okay? If that's what our focus is. Anyway, number 2. Did we do that one? No, I'm sorry. We'll stay on number 1. So create reduced capacity training. Okay. Reduced capacity training, right? Do something to cripple yourself. Not for real, okay? Let's see. Practice sidestepping to kamae as a flinch response, okay? This is one of those things, Tanemura Sensei from the Genbokan, who, for those people who like to argue between the khans, right, started out in the Budokan. He's Hatsumi Sensei's cousin, for God's sake, okay? So, and he actually trained with Takamatsu Sensei early on, right? So he talked about doing things like this, like kamae evasion and footwork and things like that, to the point of regurgitation. You know what that means, right? throwing up, right? Because either ego is just getting so sick of, oh, if I have to do that one more time, man, I'm just going to throw up. Well, then throw up, get over yourself, and get back over here, okay? Because we need to train things like these core, right? Kihon no kihon, the fundamentals of the fundamentals, okay? Kamae, the footwork to get there, things like that, until they become the flinch response. And you'll know this because if you get a friend who is willing to, like, sneak up on you every once in a while and blah, scare you, okay? The more your flinch response starts looking like kamae, the more you understand that your kamae is in muscle memory, and you're not going to need this. Because if your stuff is up here, the first shot to the head, confusion, disorientation, the adrenals start wearing out, shock starts setting in, all those kind of things, then you've got nothing because your computer hard drive was just smashed. Okay? So kamae, if nothing else, kamae needs to become your new flinch response, because kamae doesn't just move you from that space, it moves you from that space, removes a lot of targets from his access, and covers others. Right? It's not about hitting him back. It's about closing off and protecting the life-sustaining systems that if they get compromised, you're fucked. Okay? And not in a good way. Right? And then the last one that I'll give you today, let's see, that one was kamae as flinch response, kamae as flinch response, right? And then the next one is using breathing resets to center quickly before any action. I talked about this in the past, a cleansing breath and whatnot, right? So there are certain breathing methods, right? Breathing resets. That's if I could spell resets. Okay, so cleansing breath. If you realize that your breathing is shallow or tension is kicking in, that kind of thing, where you're pushing out that carbon dioxide and negative gases that are going to cause you to start, sensei, I'm feeling dizzy. Yeah, okay, and get more oxygen, nitrogen in to fuel the cells and things like that. Okay, let's move to first contact. Okay, so first contact, again, we've been hit right away and we need to reset. Takuma Sensei had a litmus test for this. And it doesn't matter if it's like a fight like this or if it's a shock situation, you suddenly realize that somebody scammed your life, stole all your money, emptied your bank accounts, and moved off with somebody else, or it was somebody who stole your identity, whatever, right? Endurance has to be reclaimed very quickly. And his litmus test was that we have to be able to reset, we have to be able to reclaim endurance, right, within the duration of a puff of smoke. So imagine taking a puff of a cigarette or a cigar or a pipe, whatever, right, and blowing it out, okay? So by the time that smoke disappears, we have to be able to reset, okay? But there's there's a secret to that lesson. Okay? The harder you blow, the faster it'll dissipate. And the stronger the winds around you, the worse the situation, the faster it will dissipate. So our job is to train to get to a point where the more stress we have going on, we need to get that out quickly and get reset, or the more intense the situation is around us, the faster we have to reset, right? We don't have the same kind of time that people have in the world where, I don't know, by the time I get up and get around to get ready, then I get ready. I guess we'll leave in about like an hour and a half after I wake up. Okay? I don't feel like it. Fantastic. You're like feeling knives going into your body. You're like, just not motivated. Not my fault. Okay? How about if we stop making it about feelings and motivation and start making it about discipline, wisdom, and the ability to act, whether we feel like it or not. Okay? Otherwise, we should probably stop using the damn word warrior. But hey, I'm just some fat old bald guy. What? Don't listen to me. Anyway, during, right? Did I hit all those? No, we're still on first contact. Okay, so Mid-contact injury insert. So if you're working with a kata, right? What happens if, okay? So think Hicho no kata, right? So, we learn it to either load the leg for a kick while we're blocking that incoming arm or knife stab so we can kick and then continue on, right? Or he does a leg sweep so we clear and then we move in, right? But what if the leg got nailed and we're not going to do a formal Hicho, but like I can't put my weight down? Or in the process of moving around, right? I stepped on a nail. I'm at the beach. I stepped on a sea urchin or a jellyfish or something like that because we just happened to be near the water. Whatever, right? Roll my ankle, okay? So there are reverse Hicho, right? Where lead leg is down, rear leg is up, okay? I know it looks backwards. People are like, that's not right. Okay? Yeah, maybe I need to keep this from bumping into things because I can't put pressure on it. And so now I have to work the Uda of Taijutsu. Because normally, right, we want to use the legs first, right? But what if we can't use the legs? Okay, well, then you have to use the torso. How do I know this? Well, it said Hatsumi Sensei's Togakure Ryu Ninpo, or what we normally call the Tenshichi Ryaku no Maki, or the instructor scroll. It's right in there in the Taijutsu section. Okay, not making this stuff up. And even if I were, like, most people aren't going to look it up anyway. But I challenge you. Go ahead and look it up. It's there. Okay. We could do a drill, right? We could do a partner surprise attack with you responding from a compromised posture. Okay. Like they throw something and you find yourself here, and then next thing is coming up. Well, that wasn't good taijutsu to do that first move. Yeah, I know, but you have to work from where you are. Okay. Or as he's moving in to do the attack, it's wintertime, step on some ice, or you step on wet tile in a store and your foot slips out from under you and you're in this oh shit position, right? So move from there, okay? Or you could practice things like one step, get clear, breathe, reset, movement kind of things from a surprised situation where he tags you a couple of times and your job is to get out and reset the kamae, move, put some more distance in there, do a couple of those cleansing breaths and reset. So now when he comes in, now you're ready. Okay. You could also do those drills like Shushimon from Hadis do that, if you get tagged in a certain spot, okay, then that arm is taken out of the scenario, right? Taken out of the situation, right? So now you have to protect it so it doesn't get used against you or further damage because that'll cause shock to set in faster. Right, I need to save it, but also I need to bring the good weapons to bear, right? Because this is gonna do me no good whatsoever. Okay, I always find it interesting that people like to fight from here because they trust that they can move from here all the way to his temple. They're betting on speed, but they're willing to leave themselves wide open because and again, it's like playing the lottery. Right? People can do whatever they want. Okay, as long as it works, they're going to believe that that's the right way. As soon as it doesn't work, it depends on their personality. They can play the blame game. Anyway, so during so that was first contact. During the attack, we could do Henka development drills. Okay, so again, just like I was covering, if X body part is injured, how does the technique evolve? Right? What do we do from there? Okay. Let's say I'm doing Ichimon's no kata, where I'm coming in to do this thing over here, and I go to catch his arm, right? And he does something to block that or to counter that, and that gets taken away. Well, this is really important for moving in to get this because this arm doesn't just do a counter strike or doesn't just do uke nagash, so I can do a shito. It's controlling his body, breaking his balance, controlling his ability to get at me or stop me or escape. So this is an easy shot. Okay, Ichimon's no kata is an ideal. It's not just a beginner's technique. It's an ideal, and it's a one-shot kill. This is nobody gets hit here. Okay, you're done. Okay, but what happens now? Okay, how do I change? How do I move in? Okay, immobilization. okay, plus protection. Okay, so this was I just described this with Shoshimomsum's classes that I was in, where we have to immobilize and remove that so that he can't get at it and things like that, right? And then decision drills, right? We would often we work a technique, then we work 3 variations as alternates should something change in the fight. So we'd have like 3 backup tactics, right? And then based on what he did to block or whatever, then one would be a better answer than the others, right? But we could do the same thing based on limitations. Okay, look at our kata, and then look at an injury point where it didn't quite land, or throwing that kick at his midsection or whatever, right? He covers to protect his midsection, and our shin or the instep of our foot runs into the point of his elbow, point of his elbow, and now the leg wants to shut down, right? How do we continue, right? So again, I long stopped writing this stuff. I apologize, but you'll have the recording, right? And then number 4, the injury after, right? So practice post-conflict scans with injury simulation. Okay, so limited limb, blurred vision, unsteady footing, those kind of things where we might have to be tactile, right, to figure things out. Learn when you throw somebody that you always, whether he lands on the ideal when you throw somebody or you take them down, I don't care if it's gyakute, mushadori, musodori, ganseki nage, whatever. You throw somebody to the ground, ideally you want them on their side with his spine pointing at you. Okay, because that gives you access to his spine and his organs, and you're in the best position because the body's designed to work that way, not behind us. Okay, and even if he were to go for a weapon, he has to get around his own body to get at you. Okay, if we get him on his back, if he lands on his back, then we immediately need to do something. Gyokuryu does it using Hicho, other ones, right? Doing these manipulations. Tagagi Yoshin using Dogaish, those kind of things to get him over onto his gut or get him onto his side, so that again, his follow-up can't be to move in my direction or to point things in my direction and whatnot. Okay. So let's see. We could add in medical aftermath protocols to scenario training. Okay. Are you learning emergency or combat first aid, that if you're bleeding out or that the shock is setting in, right? How to treat things very, very quickly so that, right? Okay. And then the last one is stress inoculation, right? Simulate combat breath work and soft focus as bleeding or shock sets in, those kind of things, right? So kind of playing around with different things, all right? So a little bonus integration here for you, which is a strategic mindset shift, okay? So the point here is to use these principles in all training. 1, injury is not failure. Okay, injury is not points against you. It's not the reason the fight goes to the other guy, that kind of thing, right? Injury is not failure. Okay, it's just another variable, right? Winning starts with deciding to survive. Okay, Hatsumi Sensei is always taught, stop thinking about winning or losing. That will cause you to lose, okay, or contribute to a loss. Okay, winning starts with deciding to survive. And 3, preparation beats perfection. Okay, no matter what ego wants to tell you. Right? Preparation beats perfection. Okay. So again, I talked about a couple of these tactical reset tools, cleansing breath drill, right? Oxygenate the system, release tension, release those negative gases. This phrase I use, I even have it in one of my free ebooks that are available, fight smarter, not harder, right? So use strategy to decide faster, not rely on acting faster. Okay. So this is not about how fast you do things, like how fast muscle contraction and getting that shot out there, whatever. Reaction time starts in the head. Okay, how quickly can you decide on options and start that chain of events? That's what allows us to move slower than the attacker and still beat them, because we're playing the timing game, not the how fast can the limb move. Because if I'm slightly out of his range, I slow him down. No matter how fast his punch is, if he has to overreach to get me, okay, it's when I'm at jabbing distance, because I'm playing the same game he is, where I'm willing to take one to get one, and now I have to hope that my brain holds up more than his does. Okay, don't play that game. Okay, so a little closing quote here for you, right? I use this in my defensive combat handgun stuff all the time. When people are doing the flailing or the spray pray kind of thing, right? You can't miss often enough to win. Okay, you can't hope you're uninjured when survival's on the line. Okay, you have to train. You must train to win with what's left. Right? No hoping, no wishing, whatever. Right? Ultimately, when shit hits the fan, and this is not just a martial arts thing. This is a whole life thing. Right? All you have to work with is what you have to work with. But if you haven't trained yourself to be a problem solver, recognize what you have, and be able to put together a solution with that, then yep, you're going to fail because you're going to automatically assume that you got nothing. Okay. So quick wrap up here, a little training prompt for the week to keep you busy because we're not going to have a Friday class this week. Hoping to get something started next week, but we're going to get the classes started as quickly as possible. So choose one of the 4 timing categories: before, first contact, during, or after, right? Simulate that condition in your next training session, solo or with a partner, okay? And then journal, right? What worked, what didn't, and what your mind did under stress, okay? Figure it out, okay? And remember that real mastery starts where most people's training stops, okay? So that's what I have for you. Hopefully this was helpful. I'm glad to be back on with things just over the next couple of episodes. You may see the backdrop change. You may see different things going on or happening or whatever. But I want to get back on with the training just as much for me as for everybody else. But again, hopefully this was helpful. Remember, this is not the dancing monkey showing you techniques physically. This is the shit that goes on behind the scene that allows us to choose the right techniques, make sure that we're controlling our training so that it is leading us toward real self-protection, survival, which is why the ninja put the shit together, right? And we're not falling for the same kind of crippling mindsets and belief systems that stall most people. Okay. All right. That's what I have. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, those kind of things if you're over on whatever platform you're on. Okay. If you have any questions or comments, post those in the comment section, as long as they're, decent, and even if they're objective, right, or objectionable, I'll respond to those kind of things. If they're just flaming and they're just a one-sided asshole kind of thing, I don't respond to those. Okay, just like I don't respond to a 3-year-old that's having a temper tantrum. Okay, if you want to be right, by all means, you have my permission. Be right. It's all you. Okay, that's not for everybody. I get it. Most of you are on because you're actually trying to learn something. Okay. Anyway, that's what I have. Hopefully I'll see you beforehand, but if not, don't forget, next Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, we have our Kuden weekly podcast. That's the life mastery kind of thing, big picture, principles and concepts. And then again, we'll just continue on from here. So if I don't see you then I'll see you next week, next Wednesday, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern on